Although John Yoo likes the limelight, it's causing him some grief. Of the half a dozen lawyers who played important roles in a Bush administration decision to legalize the use of coercive, quote-unquote, interrogation techniques, which is a pseudonym for torture. Also, Yoo has emerged as the public face and target related to the policy. The 81-page Pentagon memo declassified in April 1st, 2008, contains similar language and added fuel to the fire over torture and the White House. And through it all, Yoo has defended his position in the media. On December 1st, 2005, Professor Yoo participated in a Chicago debate with Doug Castle, president of law at Notre Dame Law School, where the following exchange occurred. Castle, quote, "If the president deems that he's got to torture somebody, including by crushing the testicles of the person's child, is there no law that can stop him?" And Yoo's response says, "No treaty." Castle, "Also no law by Congress. Is this what you wrote in the August 2002 memo?" Yoo, "I think it depends on why the president thinks he needs to do that." Professor Yoo has recently embarked on a public relations campaign to respond to public demands for his dismissal from the university. And you should know, as a member of the National Lawyers Guild, I have a whole treatise basically on how he has violated the rules of this campus and the rules of ethical faculty conduct on this campus, and we don't have time for it, but he is clearly, there's a whole movement developing around trying to get him fired or dismissed from the university and disbarred as a lawyer in the United States. So he's been going around and he's, he's uppity. I mean, he's not defensive. He is who he is, and he's very aggressive about his points of view. So in this tour, he attempted to explain the rationale for his quote-unquote torture memos, and yet through this effort, Professor Yoo has indeed made further admissions regarding the disastrous work of his work for the Office of the General Counsel, of the Legal Counsel, excuse me. And here's the quote: "The other thing I was quite conscious of was I didn't want the opinion to be vague so that the people who actually have to carry things out don't have a clear line, because I think that would be very damaging and unfair to the people who actually have to do these things." And unquote. And this is a big issue in our struggle to bring him to justice in some sense, short of an actual criminal prosecution, because he has abated and he has aided and abetted torture. And in this whole timeline of when he wrote these memos and what was going on in Afghanistan and Guantanamo and in Abu Ghraib, clearly he created these memos to defend the administration from future political, legal and criminal prosecutions.
Thank you, Ms. Weills. Our next presenter is Dennis Cunningham, an attorney specializing in police misconduct and civil rights cases who founded the People's Law Office in Chicago. He has represented plaintiffs against the police, the FBI, and prisons seeking money damages for misconduct, including the families of Fred Hampton and Mark Clark in Chicago and the Attica brothers in New York. Please welcome Dennis Cunningham.
Really hard to know what to say. You could, in what Ann just said and what Dan Ellsberg said before, you get the issues quickly encapsulated and very well analyzed, and the factual basis of our concerns presented, and we're all very well aware of them anyway. And our concerns remain as they were, and some of us have had them for about 40 years and more, based on the same set of facts, and particularly the kind of facts that Dan talked about, the parallels, the essence of which is the secrecy and the lying and the obscure character of reality, of the double reality of these things going on, and the people, the public, being so thoroughly ignorant and willfully so, really. we can say that now, that maybe the biggest difference between now and 40 years ago is that the information is so much more available. And yet, the level of concern seems less. The level of public concern, the level of activity, the level of anxiety, rage, maybe not despair, seem quite less. Not to denigrate anything about this conference, but the fact that it has only this level of interest in what's supposed to be the hotbed of ferment against, I mean, of the whole country, against the type of regime under which we labor today. It speaks volumes, not necessarily about ignorance, not even necessarily, I don't think, about indifference, but about powerlessness. And powerlessness is the essence of the circumstance in which torture takes place also. That we would come here at this point in a teaching about the war to focus first, after a general introduction, on the actuality of torture, on the phenomenon whereby it has seemed suddenly to erupt into the national reality, the reality of the way our country carries on in the world. It is a reflection of this, of the disparities of power, the refined levels of torture that Anne is talking about that are practiced against, you know, what they call high-value prisoners, or even just the hapless percentages of the people held at Guantanamo and Bagram and those places that are held by mistake. But of course, America never makes mistakes, so it never admits mistakes, and so therefore they're all guilty because they're captured, and therefore subject to torture, which is justified because we're angry at them, because they fight back when we invade their country. Beyond that, the pretense that torture, systematic torture, torture as a routine element of the processing or of prisoners should become a matter of policy, open policy. Many people have pointed out the rationale that they constructed, and particularly that Yoo was charged with working out on paper and as a you know, something that could be put in the files and pointed to, are ludicrous. I mean, notions of law, they're ridiculous in terms of the way they translate vis-a-vis the existing laws, and particularly the treaties, the Convention Against Torture, which is the highest law of our land, the supreme law under the Constitution, are the treaties that the country solemnly enters into with other countries. And this is the Convention Against Torture is signed by all countries, just about. There's only the need to have a paper in the files that said, don't worry, there's a defense in the unlikely possibility that you'll ever be criminally charged for what you're doing, or that any of the people down the line, down the chain, the guys that you and others said they were really concerned about, the ones who are doing the actual beating up and waterboarding and whatever they do with the electric devices, and need to be protected.